to the place where singles shine, celebrating life, divine by design, faith and love, we intertwine. Route 77, where your journey's prime.
Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. Today we're exploring an important question. Is singleness really an epidemic in the church? We'll get into some common assumptions, reflect on what Scripture says, and discuss how the church often approaches this topic. Whether you're single, married, or just curious, we hope this conversation offers encouragement and a new perspective on singleness. Let's get started. Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. I am your host, Natasha, and I am here with Monique and David.
Hello.
And today's question, I will start by giving it with a context. So I'm on this Facebook group. Again, I usually do it just so I can see what people are talking about. And this person basically said, our Sunday school class is going through the book of Ruth. Of course, everyone likes the character Boaz. I sent a text message to my cousin-in-law, pastor's wife, and asked her how I find my Boaz, and her response has me perplexed. She said Ruth wasn't looking for a guy and spent her time focusing on doing what God asked her of her and being faithful to him. So does that mean us females aren't supposed to be looking? I would love to hear your thoughts. And so I responded, we talk about this a lot on our singles podcast. I said, look at this moment. What are you supposed to be doing with your life? Work, school, volunteer, other things, a mix of everything? Put marriage out of your mind. Your life should revolve around God, not marriage. Basically, this other person responded to me saying that having a marriage as a goal and pursuing that goal is a noble and biblical pursuit. Let me see if I can find it. Your life can revolve around God while still being proactive about pursuing marriage. We're not told to put other goals out of our mind. So this advice has always perplexed me. Just like other goals, there are practical steps that you need to take to work towards marriage. In a society where the marriage rate is decreasing at an alarming rate, and now the singleness epidemic is bleeding over into the church, it isn't wise or biblical advice to tell people to put marriage out of your mind. And I did respond to that. And then she never responded to my response of that. And I basically said that I never said that having a marriage or wanting marriage as your goal was a bad thing. I never said, I didn't have the idea that once you stop looking, then you'll find the person like has nothing to do with it. I guess we had a couple more conversations about that. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about specifically for this one is pardon?
That whole thing that you just said, didn't that go back to our previous podcast?
Yeah, we have talked about some of that about pursuing but what I wanted to specifically zero in on was when she said,
Epidemic.
in a society where the marriage rate is decreasing at an alarming rate, and now the singleness epidemic is bleeding over into the church, it isn't wise or biblical advice to tell people to put marriage out of your mind.
And I don't think that's what you were saying anyways.
No, but it's the common, I'm not going to say that she's the only one person. This is a common pushback I get on social media when I push singleness. I never push singleness as the best option, the only option, but I try to promote it as a biblical option that God calls us to at times and for sometimes all times. But it's a common pushback. But for her to say things like that there's this singleness epidemic bleeding into our church it's a common, even though people may not say it that way, it's a common, I think, thought process that singleness is often treated as a negative, to the point of if something is an epidemic, you're like, it's rampant and it's
destructive,
insidious, and it's destructive and it's evil and we need to get rid of it.
Right.
And it got me thinking like this is a common that singleness is seen.
Mm-hmm.
Either like subconsciously, like you maybe haven't thought it out in all those words, but you recoil from it. I'm not gifted with singleness.
No, because
like
they have that fear, and that's what we talked about the last time, is that if they don't think about it, then that means they've given up on it and they're never going to have it. And that's not true. That's such a lie.
No. And that's why I did continue. I think I said something, she said something, I said something, and then nothing ever responded about the fact that all these things are essentially like as a way to manipulate God into getting what you want. Even if I stop looking, that it'll come is a way of doing that.
Right.
But for this one, I just wanted to really zero in on the fact that there's a common misconception, a common perception of singleness being an epidemic, a disease, something that you need to cure, fix, weed out.
Yeah.
If only, again, I've read it over and over, and I actually thought this before I started reading it, when I started thinking about this ministry, that the purpose of many singles ministries is to put themselves out of business. It's to get people married off.
Right.
That's considered a successful singles ministry.
Is that every single person there is now married. And we can now
that would be
shut down the singles ministry because we don't need it no more.
Yeah, it's weird when I don't think, again, some of these things I don't think people have thought through to that logical conclusion, but that's the way that you're acting, and that's the logical conclusion.
Yeah.
Like that you would consider your singles ministry a success if everyone got married off.
And I think this is why a lot of people tend to avoid going to these singles ministries thing, is because it feels like a meat market.
Yeah.
And
or that's even the purpose that they go. It has nothing to do with learning how to be single. It's just like
and learning more about
you go
God.
to the event. Yeah, you go to the event, and that's just the
turn over some
other
tables.
Yeah. But like you go to the event, you're not even thinking about the fact that you might be doing a Bible study or learning about how to be single. You're just like, okay, there's a guy. I don't know. Then you look over there's a guy. I could, yeah, maybe I'll go sit there next time. I'll sit by that person and get to know them. That's your purpose. That's the whole reason for going.
And when I was after my husband passed away a couple of years, I thought maybe I'll just go to one of these singles thing. And I went to one at this one church, and yeah, the coordinators actually started dating and got married. So, well, that kind of made that irrelevant.
So what, do they have to get a new coordinator?
I don't know.
Department.
It's so funny because
I don't even know if it's still running anymore. I know there was another one, and I think they did try to make this one more of a, let's study and actually study. But it's still, I mean, you still walk
but I
in
think
and
the
you still do
perception of the
that.
people, yeah. That's it's like you're
A honing pigeon.
yeah, and everything else is just happening in the background, and you're like, yeah, Matthew chapter 3, that's a guy over there. He's cute. Like, there's no, like, that's definitely not the focus. Like, you're there for one reason, and that's me guilty of that. I'm guilty as charged.
I can't say I'm guilty of that one.
Well, and and once I realized what I was doing, I stopped going. Because I realized
and that's the thing. That's what people do, is because the people who are running it are not saying anything different. They're not saying this is important for singles to come to this because it's important to learn how to be single. Again, that scares people, like we talked about last time.
And I think as a single person, unless you are strictly, I am never getting married. I don't want to be married. I don't want to have to date. I don't want any of that. I don't want to have anything to do with that. That is not for me. They would probably go to that with a totally different perspective. But I think
I'll tell you,
90% of single Christians, even if they say, "Oh no, I'm going there for the Bible study." Yeah, no, you're not. You're not.
I can say, okay, yeah, I've already mentioned that the reason I went to a Christian university was to find a guy, not to do school. So it was like a big, gigantic, I will never say waste of time because I did get my degrees and I've done well with those things. But
and
I
now
had
you're
that
doing
attitude.
Online studying, so you can't have that attitude.
Yeah. But what I was going to say is that's the kind of thing I went in, like the singles ministry, like attitude, like going in, I'm like, yeah, the peripheral was the school. The main focus was to find a guy. But I used to see like mature students, which is basically not the people going regularly, they're a little older, and just be like, they used to do so good in all the courses, and you're like, wow, they're like so good, they're so smart, they're doing all this. But now that I'm doing my master's, even though I'm doing like one at a time, I realize my purpose for going to school now is to go to school. So I'm actually getting what I'm supposed to out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not about finding a guy. It's not, again, online stuff, it's hard to do that anyway, but still, that's not the purpose. It's not even in my realm of possibility. Even if I was going to in-class ones, like I was going to in the summer last year and I just ended up not doing that course, I was going to be in class for a week with people. Like, but that was definitely, it would have been nice to meet people in person and be like, hey, how's it going? And blah, blah, blah. But it wouldn't have been like, there's a guy, I don't see a ring. That might be a possibility. And then but we think, but
That old.
there's
And
this,
you,
I know,
and,
that's like the first thing.
and you do it subconsciously too, I think, because you kind
Yeah.
of like scoping out, like you go to a new church and there's a whole bunch of people and you start scoping out the left finger ring. Right,
Yeah. And
who isn't married and who
I
might
don't
be a
know if you've
potential.
ever done that, David. I don't know if you've ever done that, David, but that's literally the
He
first thing you notice.
he may not have been able to notice that kind of thing unless it was shiny and blingy.
And then he definitely knows. And then you definitely know they're taken.
Yeah, there you go. Or
Nope, never
or
noticed that thing.
either that or they just have really shiny stuff on and they probably want a lot of money and you don't have it.
Well, maybe the church, you got the left side being all the singles and the right side being couples. You just navigate to one side.
We gotta separate it so people that with visual disabilities will know.
By the way, the left side of the church is for the single people only. Please make space. All the children sit over there.
Yeah, that's right. And young and teenagers.
Yeah.
And all the people who are dating or whatever aren't sure where to sit because they're not married and they're not single.
You
They all in the middle.
sit in the middle of the rows in the hall in the.
They're in the
You
merging
don't get
lane.
chairs.
Merging lane.
You don't get chairs yet.
No, you have to sit on the floor, right in the
Yeah.
front where the pastor is, so that he can point his finger at you and say, "You're the culprit."
Yeah. Either get married or don't. It's none of this wishy-washy stuff.
Right? Yeah.
But we've only been on 2 dates. That's okay. You should know by now.
Yeah. Fish or cut bait.
They're right.
There's another saying, but this
Decide
is
now.
not a good platform for that one. Yeah, right?
Yeah, right.
Tisk, tisk, tisk. Tiff.
It's just interesting to think about it in that way. That is definitely how I was. And again, I'm not gonna say I was raised that way. Like we specifically were like, make sure you look for the guys, make sure if they're unmarried, make sure those are not explicitly taught. But by creating this environment where you're just saying the ultimate, the best, if you want to be doing what God wants you to do, the best of what God wants you, the most blessed thing is to be married and have kids. And when you raise it up to that point, like over and over, and I know part of it is to just push back against societies like where none of it matters. But again, like pushing back an extreme with an extreme is not the answer. But by doing that, then you're telling people that like you have to pursue this goal. If you want to be doing what God really wants you to do, if you want to be in his good books, if you want to be doing what's holy and right, then you need to be pursuing this goal with your entire body and soul.
Yeah, and you know what else I blame? Media. Social media, television media. They're lately I've been seeing a lot of reports about the population drop, people not having kids, people not getting married, and they're alarmist. They're giving out these alarmist rhetoric saying that, oh no, our population dropped like 0.05% last year. So instead of having 2.5 kids, you're having 2 kids or 2.3 kids.
Wait. How do you have 2.5 kids?
It's an
It's an average. So one family has 2, one has 3.
Yeah. So instead of that kind of, now you're just having families that are just having 2 kids.
2 kids. Yeah.
Although if you go
Instead
to
of
my
2 or 3.
church, most of them have 4 or more.
Yeah.
People
Where I
are
grew up
still-
too.
People are still having kids. People are still having kids. That's going to be normal. It's going to happen whether the media alarms people about it or not. Kids are still being made. Kids are still being born.
Mhm.
Kids are still growing up, still going to school. Although they're, if you live in a really tiny small town with 500 people, you might find your population a little bit more difficult to grow. You must want to bring some people in.
Just don't know. But even like when we look at it, like when by saying something like that the singleness is an epidemic, it's telling people that they're not doing the right thing by not getting married. And I'm thinking about it too a lot because I was thinking about this topic and thinking about what is the church telling people, whether it's explicitly or implicitly. And thinking about it, like even with my old church, it was like this person got married at 18, this person got married at 19, person got married at 21. It's so exciting. They got married young, they have lots of kids, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, is that really success? Is it really what you want them to get married at that age? Every single one of them? And so I'm just like, is that what God wants? Is that considered a successful church? Is that you got, especially if you have been pushing the fact that marriage and kids are like the kind of the epitome
Mhm.
or the ultimate of God's will, that you're saying, yep, we got all our kids are like they got married before they were 21. And you're like, but that doesn't even make sense. That many people should be able to find people at that age and be like, "Yep, I'm ready to get married." It should fluctuate. Some people do it then, some people do it in their 30s, some people in their 20s, some people like it should be more sporadic. I think if God, I don't think is going to go around being like, "Okay, everybody needs to get to 20, get married," and then like he has the gifting out there for different reasons. And if you even look at the Bible, like we talk about, oh, we always talk about Mary being like maybe 14 or whatever. One, we're never given her age, but just because it was culturally that way.
And they died a lot younger.
Yeah, but if you look at it, I think it was when Isaac married Rebecca, he was like 40. Like his dad didn't go looking for a wife to him till he was 40. And
Yeah.
he wasn't out there. Yeah, and it's not even like he was saying, "Hey dad, like I should have been married 20 years ago." It's just funny. I think Jacob too wasn't as he was again, even though he had to wait for so many years as well to before he married his two wives. But
714, what, 21 years before he could?
no, he married both of them at the same time, but he after the first 7, but he still had to stay for another 7 years because he got the
Oh,
second
yeah.
one. So, it was just like the fact that we sit there and we don't actually is there any prescription, like prescribed Bible verses that say
Thou
that
must
you
be
should get
married
married?
by 21.
Yeah, and it does say things like, "Blessed is he who finds a wife of his youth." Okay? Yes, and blessed is the person with a quiver full of children. But it's not the only blessing.
No.
But it also shouldn't be seen as a curse that you got married at 20 or that you had a bunch of kids. Like that's neither being single and not having kids is also a blessing. We talk about like it's talked about as a blessing in scripture as Paul talks about how it gives one purpose of unity of like it gives a person a unity of purpose towards God. Like it's a gift is a
Hmm.
blessing. And it's just crazy how we sit there and we think that in order to keep this epidemic of singleness from happening, we need to get everybody married off, boom, boom, not thinking just because they're 20 and they're 19 and they're in love and they seem like they'll make a good couple, like they're Christians or whatever like that, they're still very young.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like there's still
Let
a
them
lot of stuff
mature.
that,
Well, and,
but also
and it,
there's like a lot of things that can go wrong because they're still, they like people that are that age are still trying to figure out
who they are,
what who they
where
are.
they're
Yeah.
going, what they want to do, and also in today's society, in today's economy, let me qualify that. A lot of people are putting off marriage and children because they can't even afford it. What is it? There was a news report the other day that 1 in 4 British Columbians, which is the province we live in, are about $200 shy of paying off all of their monthly bills. That's very sad. So
That seems super
high,
low.
super
No,
low.
it feels more like 1,000 a month that you're short. I don't
No,
know how I would word it.
I think, yeah, it does feel like that a lot of
That's
times.
being very it's being very like positive and or optimistic and
But if you think about like paying off your bills, that means that every month there is either your hydro bill isn't, you don't have money to pay your hydro bill, or you don't have money to pay your phone bill, or you don't have money to pay your water bill every month. You're that much, you don't have money for food, you don't have money for gas. You don't have money enough to pay your bills. So that's what that means. So that means that 1 in 4 British Columbians are that close to bankruptcy. So when you're a young person and you're faced with the prospect that, family and stuff are saying, you need to get married and stuff, and the only job you can find is something that barely pays you minimum wage to afford a house. So how can I get married if I can't even afford a house? I can't afford the gas for my car because the payments, because I still have car payments, and then I got to pay for gas on top of it and insurance on top of that.
Insurance and everything. Yeah.
It's so discouraging when you can't even afford.
Think about it. If a person is trying to, like you and I, like we're single people, but we happen to help by pooling money. But even then, like we're both working a lot. And
Full-time
who
jobs.
has time? Yeah. It's who has time to date and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
let alone think about marriage and stuff like that. If you're trying to make ends meet, like you don't have time to create like a place that will.
And I was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Now I've lost one of those jobs, and we also are looking for a new renter. So that now puts a lot more pressure on my finances. And I'm just like, I'm writing and rewriting my budget, and I'm going, how am I making it through the month?
Yeah, you're like pinching every penny that
Yeah.
so that yeah. And so that's part of it. I think it's interesting when we look at Matthew 19:10 to 12, because this is actually from Jesus talking about things with to do with marriage. And the disciples said to him, if such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry. But he said to them, not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been made so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who is able to receive this receive it. And I just find it interesting. He wasn't just, no, that's not what I'm saying. Like, you should be getting married as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how he answered it. He's just, no, you're right.
Some people, and just to say, when you think of eunuchs, you think, well, it's only a guy, and they're just monks. That's not the case. I believe what he's saying is that some people just choose to remain single. You either something.
Because with the Christian singleness should become celibacy as well.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
he's referring to.
Yeah.
But just the fact that he wasn't listening, no, you're getting me wrong. You should be getting married. If
Re-
God was like, say,
Reread Matthew again. Reread that verse.
which it says, which part? The whole thing?
Yeah, sure, the whole thing.
Disciples said to him, if such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry. But he said to them, not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men,
Okay,
and there are eunuchs who.
wait.
Yep.
There are those who were made by eunuchs by man.
Yeah.
So in the context of what you were just speaking, who was made a eunuch there? By man?
By men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in that culture, in that context, war was delivered by man.
What?
So in that context, okay, that almost sounds like a man killing another man
No.
in war.
No.
Right?
No. You know what a eunuch is, right?
Yeah.
It's a guy who's literally castrated, is what that
Yeah.
means. So in a lot of palaces where kings and queens and
Okay.
princes, they would make these men eunuchs because they were around royalty, and they were not permitted to have any kind
Harems
of
and stuff.
yeah. If they were caught having any kind of relation with any, they would be beheaded.
Okay.
So in order to protect these men,
And also, if you want to bring it about to now, think about the transgender community who gets quote unquote bottom surgery.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
how is this
or
done
if
relevant?
you've got
'Cause
a diseases or
none of this is done today,
it is.
right?
Yeah, not quite like that in some societies.
Not
It
like
is.
maybe some society, but if you think about it, if a trans man would like to be
A
a
woman.
woman and they get the bottom surgery to remove parts, then they are now being a eunuch.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And there
But-
are sometimes
but
if
we're
you
we're
get
seeing
cancer.
you're seeing what you just mentioned as sin. What
Uh-huh.
Matthew is
No,
speaking
I
here
think
is not sin. This is
no. I'm saying these people, like if they become believers, they don't magically get parts back. They're still eunuchs, and these things are part of
Yeah.
life. You're gonna have
To put that
eunuchs.
verse in context, they were talking about marriage and divorce. And Jesus was saying, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard. But it was not like this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another woman, commits adultery. So the disciple says, if this is the situation between a husband and wife, it is better not to marry. And that's where Jesus says, yeah, exactly.
So, and he's just saying in here, some people
Then how
don't
does
have the
the
capacity
definition of a eunuch even apply to the previous statement?
because
Because
they're saying there's
what you
people
just said,
who,
that the eunuch is a physical attribute that is dealt
That's,
onto a man in
yeah,
order for the man not to.
that is why he says, not everyone can accept this word about divorce, but only those to whom it has been given. So,
but think
yeah,
about if the person
about
who
being
was made a
single.
eunuch in, yeah, made a eunuch in that time period.
Yeah,
Again, I think they also were dealing with the fact that marriage was probably being raised up on a
yeah,
pedestal. But then you're not going to, you shouldn't, like if a man becomes a believer in that time, they were made eunuchs because they're in the royal palace dealing with the harem. And Jesus is basically saying these things happen to people. This is real life. But they can still lead a completely blessed, fulfilled life, regardless of what's been done to them or how they were born, if they were born with an issue, or if they choose to remain celibate. Or some people did actually castrate themselves because they thought they were trying to save themselves from sexual sins. There was that's a whole other conversation, but
yeah.
whether that was correct or idea or not. But there were people who did that to themselves. But it was more like Jesus is never saying that it's a sin. These things have been done to people, and if these people become believers, like it doesn't detract from them actually having a fulfilled experience as a human person and as a child of God.
Yeah. That's why you say, not everybody can accept that when you get married, you're married for life. You don't divorce. That's not the way it's supposed to be. That's why a lot of people preferred to stay single, and some of them would actually make themselves to be eunuchs so that nobody could force them to get married and be in that kind of a situation. Being,
And I talked, sorry, keep
yeah,
going.
a lot of people in that day and age were also in arranged marriages. So you were technically forced to marry somebody that you may not even like to be with, so so they would, oh, I can't now, I'm a eunuch. I'm out of the
But
market.
even like some that happened in the Middle Ages with the nunneries, a lot of women joined a nunnery just to avoid being married off. It had nothing to do with their Christian faith. They didn't have a Christian faith, some of them. They just didn't want to be married
They
off.
just
So that's a
married off.
way of creating, making yourself a eunuch in a sense of taking yourself off the market.
But it's not, but to say like nowadays that it's an epidemic, women are kind of doing the same thing with that
4B.
4B movement. Yeah. They're basically saying we are tired of being looked at, thought of, and used as an object. We are human beings with feelings just like you, and we want to be treated with the same kind of respect as you want to be treated as men. So we're taking ourselves off the market until you have a better attitude about us. And the pornography industry had a lot to do with how men view women. The body shaming, the like I mentioned one of my actresses that ended up in the hospital. Not my actresses personally, but just one that I admire greatly. And
That's where all her money's going.
right.
She's funding actresses
Oh, that's
in
good.
Korea.
Just clarify. This is an actress in a movie, not because you sell this pornography stuff and then you follow it up with an actress.
Yeah.
Chris-
No, I'm talking about the body
Body
shaming.
shaming.
Okay.
She is a very popular actress. She's a Chinese actress actually, and if anybody watches Chinese drama, you will know who I'm talking about. She had, and I've noticed that lately, she seemed to have lost an extreme amount of weight, and she was always just very cute and very pretty, and she wasn't fat by any stretch of the imagination. She had gone so bad that she had to be hospitalized. And now she's had counseling and she's doing counseling, and apparently she's doing much better now, and she's got a lot of people around her who are supporting her, which I'm very thankful for, because nobody should have to go through that kind of stuff alone. The movie industry, the drama industry, the high profile, even for singers and people who are popular that way, they get the same thing. You have to be something like a zero size in order to be considered attractive. That's so wrong. And, you can't blame people for saying, I don't want to be in a relationship. I don't want to be with anybody because nobody will accept me the way I am supposed to be normally. Was that a soapbox? Was I on that? I'll get off now.
This is a soapbox. That's why we're here.
Soapbox. But yeah,
But yeah.
but that's one of the reasons why a lot of women have decided that they don't want to be in relationships. They want people to stop looking at women as objects. And it's now starting to go the other way too, because I find that men, they have to have the muscles, and they have to build themselves up and become,
Just look at the difference between superhero movies from 20 years ago versus what they have to do now.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Insane, the kind of, they have to pump it up, man.
They got to pump it up and then they got to dehydrate themselves so that they can actually. Anyway, that's a whole other topic about body, but it's
So
just an idea
dangerous.
of like why people
Yeah,
are just like, forget it, I'm just gonna stay single,
yeah.
and that's not, yeah. So I don't think so. I think the point is like when it comes to treating singleness like an epidemic, it's like demonizing people who actually uplift singleness
Yeah.
and say, hey, singleness is a good thing. It's a great thing. Stay single for as long as, pardon me, as long as you feel God's calling you to it. Stay single forever. That's okay. And then it's by saying that, it means because they think that two things can't be true at the same time. And sometimes they can't be. Like if I said that up is down and up is up, like those are two opposites. They can't be true at the same
No.
time. Two things are capable of being true at the same time. I can say singleness is awesome. You should stay single forever if you want, and or you can, because you can do all this, without saying that marriage is horrible, never get married, it's evil and wrong.
Right.
Because I affirm one thing doesn't I mean
You
because
disaffirm the other.
yeah, and it's because like it's not a true opposite. Like up and down are opposites. They can't both be up and down
But
or
singleness
positive and negative.
and marriage,
But singleness and marriage aren't really opposites in a sense. They're just we think about them as opposites, sort of, but it's not. It's more.
they're
It's
not.
yeah. So they're equal. Like they just go
It's not like one.
together.
It's not like one is a doctor and the other one's flipping hamburgers. They're
It's
equal. They're both
they're equal,
doctors.
and their status before God is equal, and their status within the church should be equal, and it should never be. But don't you want to get married? But don't shouldn't like didn't you get all these questions like because by not trying to push marriage, we feel like we're succumbing to the cultural flippancy towards marriage, or that it's not as important, instead of saying forget culture. In a sense, this is about being in the church. If you're single and you want to remain single for the rest of your life, make sure that you're doing what God's calling you to do in the moment. What God's calling you to do it. If you are single and then you want to get married and you happen to get married, good, but make sure you're doing what God's calling you in the moment.
And make sure you're getting married for the right reasons.
Yeah. And that's why I think like all these people who get married at such an early age, for us to consider early age, is this really normal, or should there be more of a spread?
See, I know.
And I'm not saying that they should never get married. I'm just saying there should be a little more. In some churches, especially, it can be like the average is so young.
Yeah.
Instead of the average should be a little bit older.
Yep. And I think in rare instances, yeah, that young marriage is like, I knew a girl and she had to get permission from her parents to get married because she was 18, but
Mhm.
loved her husband so much that when she was still dating him, she gave him one of her kidneys. That is one way to make the couple one flesh. So, well, he literally was dying. He was in the hospital waiting for a transplant and he was dying. And she said, test me. And they said, you're not related. It would be very rare for you to be a match. And she was a match. So she said, I can live with one kidney. If he can live with one kidney, so can I. So she gave him her kidney. And then after he recovered, she asked her parents for permission for them to get married. And they are still married to this day. But that is a very rare situation, because how often does that happen?
again, like it just feels like whenever people see them getting married so young, it's just like, phew, okay, we got them married.
Right.
And then they just have to figure it out from there on. And when there's issues and when there's bumps and when there's big issues, it's like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Like they're Christian people who got married and they didn't have all these backgrounds and things that happened or whatever. It's a shock
Well,
that it didn't
yeah,
become that it wasn't all flowers and
yeah.
rainbows. And you're like, they're two sinful people marrying sinful people. And yes, there's positives to get married young, but there's also negatives. Just like there's positives to get married older, but there's also negatives.
Which is
But there's this idea that by getting married young, it's more pure or more godly than if you're getting married at 45,
yeah,
like me. Like all of a sudden that's, well, at least you finally got married, you got onto that holy track. Wow.
right.
But there's the idea is, ooh, that I know a person who got married at 45. It was like crazy, and then they got married, and it was like, oh, good that they got cured from their singleness disease. We thought they was never. If they thought they were goner, they're gonna be like this forever.
We heard about people, she waited, she was never married, and then finally at 75, she met her man.
And then they're like, it's such a wonderful love story. Like the previous 75 years of her
Met nothing,
marriage didn't matter, or over her life didn't matter.
right? Yep.
It's wait, what?
Whole
Yes, it would be. It's something
we'll
to
just
celebrate.
erase that whole other. Now she's
I know.
married. It's all good again.
It's all good. Yeah, we were worried. We thought she'd never get married. It was past her prime, and then but wonderful. And again, celebrate it. It's
It is
awesome. If you
awesome.
get married, it's awesome. But don't diminish the rest of their lives just because they weren't married.
Right? Well, and the reason why this girl I know, she had to get permission from her parents to get married because they wanted her to wait until she was older. But she's
I know there was a person that I know. I think she was 16, and she had to get permission. And she married. They're still married, and they have lots of
yeah.
kids. It's been teen years,
And
but yeah.
but these are rare instances. And like for her, it's just like I gave him my kidney. I think I'm gonna stay with him.
I think I'm pretty committed at this
Pretty
point. Yeah.
much, yeah. Because that's I mean, sure you could technically give it to a stranger because many people do.
Yeah.
But they already had the relationship and they have a wonderful relationship and they're very sweet on each other still after how long has it been now? How old are their kids? Their oldest one is because I think they waited a few years before they started having kids. So their oldest one must be in their teens by now.
Yeah. So you don't, but I just feel like what happens is people like they see them get married young and they're like, "Oh, good. They got rid of the singleness. They're married. Everything should be good now." And then it's not
No,
good
no.
or it's patchy just like normal relationships are. But it's a shock to people because but they got married young. They did what they're supposed to do. They did the godly thing. There shouldn't be any bumps or bruises along the way. And you're like, no, it's a road with potholes. And it regardless of if you're single or you're married, it's not marriage isn't this magical cure all. And it's not
No,
and marriage isn't, I don't think, to be used as a what do they call it?
a cure.
It's a statement to the rest of the world.
You are worth.
It's not meant to yeah, it's not to be sitting there, see us Christians, we have it all together. We're getting married young. You guys are waiting. It's not, that's never what it's meant to be. It's not
Status
like the
symbol.
statement. Yeah, or it's this other word that I'm trying to think of. But anyway, it's not like yeah, it'll come to me like tonight. I'll be in the middle of the night. I'll be texting Monique. I got the word. Maybe I could dub over. Anyway, but yeah, it's just, but it's not to be that.
No,
It's nothing about
it's not the end all.
showing other people.
It's
It's not just to prove yourself better than the non-Christians or those crazy churches with all those singles celebrating singleness. Like it's not. It's about
and if you
the
and
unity of Christ.
if this is your thought, you are a worthless person unless you're married. You need to talk to somebody.
Because
And
you're not going to be.
and I get that feeling because I had that for so many years, and I've actually think I lost that feeling because I can't seem to feel that anymore. And it's not like I've given up on ever getting
No.
married because there are times where it's just like, oh, it'd be nice to, just to have somebody to, hold hands and be all cuddly with, kind of thing. And then I get over it.
But the thing is, it's not the point of life.
No.
And that was for me.
Yeah.
Like, it was the 100% purpose of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time I went
Everything
to a
else,
grocery store, every time I
yeah,
walked through the
everything.
church doors,
First thing you notice,
yeah, you start scoping the singles
you start here
and work your way
and
up.
then check this, and then see if they're. It'd be like guys going, "Hey, my eyes are up here. Stop looking at my hand." You don't even worry about
They
how they
should
look
just
until
walk
after you
around
check.
like this. This is
Not even like this. It's
I'm just letting you know.
I'm not giving you the middle finger, but I'm showing you my finger. But I had to show it somehow, so
I
it's
have
like,
to let you know that I am just
perpetually thoughtful.
oh yeah.
Just post a screenshot of your hand on top of your forehead.
That's it.
But then it's just like it's so funny because that's exactly like you'd look there and then you'd look up and be like, or
Really.
like, but it's just horrible. Like
You
it's
know, and the
horrible.
fun
That's
thing
the
is
whole purpose.
that there are some married men who, number one, they don't like wearing
Should be.
jewelry, they don't like wearing rings, or they are in a job that prevents
Where it's
them.
not safe to wear.
Yeah, where it's just not safe for them to wear it. So this is irrelevant.
It's just a helpful
Yes.
indicator.
I mean, if there were
Sometimes,
definitely off, but you know, if he's holding a girl's hand, chances are it's his wife or girlfriend.
yeah, or a girlfriend. But see, I find it like now I
If
will
he's
check
around kids, he's definitely a flint.
definitely. But like sometimes I will check nowadays, but it's more if I happen to see a guy that I do find attractive, I don't, not that I sit there and dwell on it ever really, but I don't want to be like thinking that about a person who's married.
Right.
So I'll be like, is it safe to think in my head that person's attractive? And then, but then it'll be like for, say they're not wearing the ring and you're like, okay. And then you move on. It's not like I just obsess or talk to them and expect it, hopefully there's a relationship. I just feel like a little bit calmer about us.
I'm thinking like,
I'm
wow, you're
thinking
really
about
good
that
looking.
person. Yeah, it makes
Mommy.
you like, I don't know. It just makes it feel a little less guilty if it's like somebody's not
Oh,
married.
trust me, I'm not going
Or
any
don't think.
further than that.
I'm just like, so I thought that was it, but it feels, I don't know, more appropriate.
Yeah,
if it's-
I just want to make sure that I'm not crossing any boundaries that I should not be crossing.
even in my own
Even in my own
mind,
head.
even in my own mind.
Keep it in that.
So that's like the, so I don't like
Because
automatically
we're
go
not
there, but
walking
sometimes
around
I
like
will.
this or like this.
No, and we're human, so God gave us like
Yeah.
attractions, and
Exactly.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just saying I do
Uh,
notice, but not. It's not my first look
No.
now. It's not my. I'm not like down and then up. I'm like, oh, that's person. And then I'll maybe they're not married, or ooh, they're married.
And
Not thinking anymore.
and every single solitary single guy out there is not your potential husband.
There's a lot more involved in it, but it's just, but we sit there and we act like we need to cure ourselves. And that's the worst thing too. It's we don't just want to cure the singleness. We want to cure it ourselves.
Yes.
Like we're gonna make it happen.
Yes.
And believe me, I have been down that rabbit hole, all the rabbit holes.
The-
Online dating, singles things, going out to events, Christian events, just for the sole purpose, going to Christian university just for the sole purpose. Everything that you pretty much can do to force it to happen. And even with my ex, like I didn't force our interaction and he actually pursued me, which was a first. But it was like, my whole brain, even when I was going out with him and there was issues, I still overlooked it because all I had in mind was the fact that I wouldn't have to be single anymore.
And that is a bit of a red flag there, that he pursued you so strongly, because narcissists, they're victims.
Yeah.
very
And just so
much.
people know, it was very fast. It was like we met at the end of August, beginning of September. We were engaged by October. And we would have married in December, except my sister-in-law was pregnant and was due right at that time. And we pushed it to February. And then things happened, and then we ended up pushing it to June. But we still were married, like engaged in 2 months and married within like less than a year.
Well,
So that's a
that's
lot.
faster than you. We started dating shortly after Valentine's Day, and we're married in July. And then we were separated in December.
If he had
That's
his wish,
quick,
and we'd marry
yeah.
in December, it would have
Yep.
been like very fast. That was our, because the guy was like, yeah, it would have been, say the end of August. I think I met him like briefly, and then it wasn't until beginning of September I met more when we actually started talking. But then it would have been October, November. I think December, early December was when we had picked because of other things were happening. But yeah, it would have been like 3 months. That was quick. So don't merge lanes so quickly.
No, because it can be dangerous.
Indicate, check your blind spot, make sure you're at the right speed. Don't just cut off.
No, and be careful, because if it's a semi truck you're trying to cut off, it could end your life.
And not be so good. But yeah, it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just remember, as a single person, you're not ill, you're not sick, you're not
No.
living something evil.
David, you're a forever single, aren't you? Like, you have absolutely no.
He dated a little bit in high school.
Yeah.
I dated for, I think it was 6 months in high school.
But
Yeah,
you're just not. It's just nothing you're interested in. Getting married, having
Now,
kids.
if I'm not actively pursuing it, if it happens, it'll happen just kind of out of the blue and naturally,
Organically.
organically. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. You're just
Yeah, and-
enjoying your time being an uncle.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, now you got me thinking about Jamie.
Oh.
Yeah, go on.
But I love my kiddos.
Yeah.
They're so awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, you're not, as a single person, it's not something to be cured. You're not living your second best life. You're not falling short of God's expectation. If you're doing what God's calling you to do in the moment that you're in, then you're in the spot you want to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be cured.
Yeah. And as an encouragement, when God sets you on a path, you have no idea where it's going to go. There's a girl in my church who bears the same name as me, and her birthday's I think her birthday's a week before mine. So every time the church announces the birthdays, everybody comes and wishes me happy birthday, and then they wish me a happy birthday again. Because a week later, no, that's not me. It's the other Monique. And but she worked for Gain, which is a ministry that goes all over the world providing food, and she had been working in that for about 5 or 6 years. She loved it, loved her job. She just had the time of her life doing it, going places, meeting people, helping people, and she sends updates. And her update, the last one that I got from her, I also follow her on Facebook, so I've seen the pictures. She's now engaged and going to be getting married in less than 120 days now.
Oh,
But
nice.
she did what God wanted her to do. She went here. She's always wanted to do missionary work. She always wanted to go with these groups and go places and see people, and she loved it. She had the time of her life. She met so many people, and she's a very friendly girl. And now she's getting married. So, by putting your life on hold, saying, I can't do anything until I get married, you've got it backward. You've got the cart before the horse.
All right, this is something that needs fixing.
Yeah, it doesn't. You just need to go out, do what God wants you to do, enjoy your life, because God gave
There's
you.
enough in your life that needs fixing. You don't need to add that on. Believe me, sin permeates enough stuff that you don't need to add on things that aren't
Yeah, right,
sin.
right. But, like Jeremiah 29 says, and I've got it hanging up in my bathroom to remind me all the time as well, that for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. He has good things for you if you will give him the chance and just live your life. Just be happy with you. God loves you so much that he gave his only son for you. So, remember that.
You want the groom that's the best groom in the world, and
Yeah.
the church has it.
And you never know down the road what will be there. We can't see into our future. And today is no indication of what tomorrow will be.
And what if, say, tomorrow that for some reason that you passed away? Would you say to yourself, oh man, I know you're dead, but
Yes.
this is philosophical questions here. Would you say, oh my word, I didn't get married. What was the point of my life? Or I spent all my life trying to get married. I never did. What was the point of my life? And you actually didn't do stuff with your life because you were like putting it off. Like the end doesn't justify the means, in the sense of just that you get married doesn't justify the fact that you just spent all your heart, soul, and mind trying to get married.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were doing your work in your life that God's calling you to do as a single person, and then you find that you meet somebody and then you get married, or you never get married, like that's not wasted life. We don't want to waste life. And the only sickness that we have is sin. That's the only thing that needs to be cured, and is cured through Christ. And it's not singleness that needs to be. There's never a word of that in the scripture about singleness being sinful.
And
There's other things that can be sinful that you might be sitting there going like, I don't want to get married because I'm basically you're a selfish person and you want nobody else and you're like you don't want anybody else to be number one, blah blah blah. That's pride and selfishness, not singleness. So I'm just gonna quickly throw that in there because some people go, well, there's they're
there's
anyway.
gluttony, and there's pride, and there's greed, and there's lust, and there's what are the 7 deadly sins?
Yeah, all of those ones there's in there. But yeah, but there's lots of things that it's not the fact that people want to stay single, that's the sin. There's other things that there might be in their life that's sinful that then makes them decide that they want to be single or childless, but don't blame the fact that they want to be single or childless. That's not like the sin.
No.
And
And,
yeah.
and sometimes, you know, you might run into these people that say, you know what, just not ready to get married at this stage of my life.
Mhm.
We shouldn't
So-
demonize them for that.
And be like, that's awesome.
Awesome. What are you doing?
Shock your single friends and family when you say that's awesome that you're single and that you're doing this work for God.
That's just fabulously awesome. I wish I could.
We need to.
I would love to go on the missions trip where I can take like a whole year and just go to all these places with these mission things and orphanages and places where, you know, people need help. That would be so cool. I'm sold.
Just start with one. Go with this. We'll go with the youth.
Yes. Go to Mexico.
Good luck.
I have no money. Did I mention that before? I have no money.
Excuses.
Well, you know, one of these years.
I got you. I'll pay for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Get you sent.
No more excuses,
No
Monique.
more
No more
send.
excuses.
you heard him, right? Y'all heard him, right?
Hey. Send Monique to Mexico.
We're starting a GoFundMe.
Don't worry, Natasha. I'll send you too.
Oh no!
Oh, I have a better idea.
Why don't we all go?
If you haven't heard, Praise 106.5, a week trip in April to the Creation Museum. It goes to different other places, and people are saying it was the most one. It's only 5,000 some odd dollars Canadian, and with
Only. Just put the word only and it's okay.
well, you know, the stupid thing is that our Canadian dollar is so worthless that it's probably that much because our Canadian dollar is so worthless. Because I'm sure it'd be a whole heck of a lot less if it was an American. But if you were looking for something to do, there you go.
That might be something.
That might be
There you go.
something.
I don't
And
know.
you can go as a single person. You don't have to be married.
Right?
I don't know. Currency is pretty subjective. The value of currency is
Yeah.
pretty subjective.
It could go up tomorrow. You never know.
Well, right now on Friday, it was
Literally, it could go up tomorrow because of Trump's thing. You never
the
know.
inauguration. Yeah.
It'll change. It'll change something. But
Th-
anyway,
This will give you a timeline of what day it is.
yes, yes. Tomorrow is the inauguration. Today was the TikTok ban that it didn't last very long. Apparently, all the Americans are back up and running.
Oh, that's good.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And tomorrow,
yeah.
Trump becomes president of the United
President.
States again.
For a second time.
And Canada freaking out because 25% tariffs are going to happen all over the border. Give it a rest.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see what
But
happens.
what are you talking
Anyway.
about? Canada will just find new trades. We've always done that.
You know, the funny thing is that
We're passive aggressive in Canada.
Oh.
Trade with some.
no, no, we have one premier who is trying to negotiate democratically with Trump. And then you've got all the rest of Canada who says, no, we're going to go dollar for dollar. We can't, because that would require the help of Alberta. And she already said, no, sorry, you're going to have to give them all
Anyway.
your cars. Or
We digress. We digress. Okay.
you
So
can cut this part.
that is our episode on the epidemic of singleness. Hopefully, we have changed your mind. It's not a new pandemic of the church that you need to wear a mask around the singles people. You might catch it.
You don't need to go for a vaccine.
You don't want to catch singleness.
No.
Stay away. Isolate.
Don't worry.
If you're single, isolate.
Don't worry. We have a cure.
Yeah.
That's right. That was silly.
Anyway, thank you for joining us for today. Monique's gonna keep herself from that.
I'm going to mask myself against singles.
Mask yourself up. Thank you for joining us today as we devolve into craziness.
Right.
It's been a long week leading up to today.
Yes, it has.
But anyhow,
January.
we have
There's 5,000 days in January. I'm telling
January.
you.
Yes, it feels like it.
Yep.
Anyway, so thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. Made you think. That's the purpose. It's not to tell you how to think, but hopefully make you think and have conversations with people and even have a conversation with God and yourself. So reflect on yourself, reflect on what we've been talking about, see if things in here make sense to you. If not, shoot us a message. We'd be glad to talk to more. So find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, route77.ca. And yeah, we'll get back to you. We hope we'll see you all here next time.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Route 77 podcast. We hope today's discussion helped shift the narrative around singleness and reminded you of its value in God's plan. If this episode sparked any thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, X, or at route77.ca. Until next time, remember to live your single life to its fullest.